Greenwood, South Carolina. Margaret Maggie Johnson stopped breathing. The rope tightened around her neck. Her small body, barely 5 feet tall, maybe 90 pounds, went limp. 3 minutes of strangulation. 3 minutes of her 73-year-old lungs gasping for air that wouldn't come. 3 minutes while 4 white women stood watching, laughing, satisfied with their afternoon's work. They'd lynched her in broad daylight, in an alley between Morrison's hardware store and Greenwood National Bank. Hung her from an old oak tree because she'd accidentally bumped into one of them on Main Street. An accident. A momentary collision. An elderly black woman with failing eyesight who didn't see Eleanor Pritchard standing there. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," Margaret had said immediately, her voice respectful. Differential. The voice every elderly black person in 1946 South Carolina learned was necessary for survival. "Didn't see you there. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Please forgive me." But Eleanor Pritchard wasn't interested in apologies. She was interested in spectacle, in demonstration, in reminding everyone watching on Main Street exactly where black people stood in the social hierarchy. "You touched me," Eleanor screamed loud enough for the entire block to hear. "You don't touch white women. Who do you think you are?" Within minutes, 3 other white women joined her. Patricia Crawford, wife of the bank president; Virginia Morrison, wife of the school superintendent; Catherine Walsh, wife of the county clerk. All prominent, all respectable, all members of the Greenwood Women's Social Club. All about to make the worst mistake of their lives. Because what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that Margaret Johnson wasn't just some random elderly black woman. She was Bumpy Johnson's grandmother. And Bumpy Johnson was about to teach Greenwood, South Carolina, a lesson it would never forget. That's how long the 4 women had left to live. From the moment Margaret's body went limp on that rope at 2:52 p.m. to the moment all 4 women were dead, 9 hours and 55 minutes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to show you exactly what happened. How 4 women thought they could lynch an old woman with impunity. How they dragged her into an alley, beat her for 11 brutal minutes, made a noose, and hung her like it was entertainment. And how Bumpy Johnson, 800 miles away in Harlem, orchestrated their deaths before the sun rose the next morning. This is a story about consequences, about what happens when you cross a line that should never be crossed, about the difference between law and justice. Because in 1946, South Carolina, the law said lynching a black person carried no consequences if you were white. But Bumpy Johnson didn't care about the law. Margaret Johnson had lived in Greenwood her entire life. Born there in 1873, just 8 years after the Civil War ended. She'd survived Reconstruction, survived Jim Crow, survived the Depression, survived 2 world wars. She was small, frail, arthritic, moving slowly with a wooden cane that had belonged to her late husband, who died in 1929. At 2:23 p.m. on that Thursday afternoon, she walked past the Greenwood Women's Social Club carrying groceries from Miller's General Store. That's when she accidentally bumped into Eleanor Pritchard. The collision was nothing. A moment of poor visibility, an old woman's failing eyesight. But Eleanor's response was volcanic. She grabbed Margaret, called over her friends, and dragged the terrified elderly woman into the alley. Thomas Washington, a 32-year-old black man who worked at Morrison's hardware store, was on his afternoon break when he heard screaming. He looked out and saw what was happening. An elderly black woman being beaten by 4 younger white women. He started to intervene. "Hey, stop! She's an old woman!" Patricia Crawford whirled on him, her face twisted with rage. "You stay back, boy, unless you want to join her." Thomas froze. He knew the rules. Every black person in the South knew the rules. A black man who intervened to protect a black woman from white women meant death. Not just for him, but for his family, his wife, his children, everyone he loved. So he stood there, helpless, watching, tears running down his face. Witnesses who saw him later said he looked destroyed, like something fundamental inside him had died. The beating continued for 11 minutes. Margaret was on the ground, defenseless, her groceries spilled across the dirty alley floor, her wooden cane out of reach. 4 women, decades younger and significantly stronger, hitting her, kicking her, breaking her ribs. At 2:38 p.m., Eleanor Pritchard made the decision that would seal all their fates. "We're going to lynch this old bitch right here. Someone get rope." Catherine Walsh ran back to the hardware store, confronted Thomas Washington, who was still frozen outside. "Give me rope, now." Thomas couldn't speak, couldn't move. Catherine went inside and screamed at the store owner, Mr. Henderson, a white man in his 60s who knew exactly what the rope was for, and he handed it over anyway. Because in 1946, South Carolina, refusing to provide rope for a lynching meant becoming a target yourself. By 2:45 p.m., they had dragged Margaret to the oak tree at the end of the alley. Ancient tree, strong branches, perfect for what they had planned. They made a noose. Margaret was barely conscious now, her face swollen and bloodied, multiple broken ribs. She could barely breathe, couldn't resist anymore. At 2:52 p.m., they hanged her. 4 white women lynched a 73-year-old black grandmother in broad daylight because she'd accidentally bumped into one of them on the street. Margaret Johnson died within 3 minutes, strangled by the rope, her small body swaying slightly in the afternoon breeze. The 4 women stepped back, looked at their work, and laughed. Actually laughed. Then they walked back to Main Street, resumed their shopping, went into the dress shop, discussed patterns and fabrics, like absolutely nothing had happened. Thomas Washington did something incredibly brave, something that could have gotten him killed. At 3:15 p.m., he left the hardware store, found a telephone at the black-owned barbershop 2 blocks away, and made a long-distance call to New York City. Thomas didn't know Bumpy Johnson personally, had never met him, had never even been to New York. But he knew that Margaret was Bumpy Johnson's grandmother because she'd mentioned it once months ago while shopping. She'd been proud of her grandson, had said he was doing well up north, that he took care of her. Thomas knew that Bumpy Johnson was powerful, dangerous, connected, and Thomas knew that Bumpy needed to be told what had just happened. The call went through multiple operators before finally reaching Marcus Webb, Bumpy's top lieutenant, at 3:47 p.m. Thomas was nervous, speaking quickly, afraid the line might be cut. He explained everything: the accidental bump, the beating, the rope, the lynching. 4 white women. He gave their names: Eleanor Pritchard, wife of the deputy sheriff, Patricia Crawford, wife of the bank president, Virginia Morrison, wife of the school superintendent, Catherine Walsh, wife of the county clerk, all prominent, all unpunished, all currently shopping on Main Street like nothing had happened. Marcus Webb's voice was terrifyingly calm. "Stay by that phone. Someone will call you back within 1 hour. Do not leave. Do not talk to anyone else. Do you understand?" Thomas said yes. Marcus hung up. Then he called Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy Johnson was having dinner in his Harlem apartment. Pot roast, potatoes, green beans. A quiet Thursday afternoon. The phone rang. "We have a situation," Marcus said. "Your grandmother was lynched in Greenwood, South Carolina, approximately 90 minutes ago. 4 white women. I have their names." Bumpy didn't speak. The silence stretched. 15, 20, 25 seconds. Marcus waited. He knew this silence. When Bumpy Johnson went completely silent, when all the rage and grief compressed down into absolute quiet, that's when people died. Finally, Bumpy spoke. His voice was ice. "Give me the names." Marcus read them slowly. Bumpy wrote each one down with mechanical precision. When Marcus finished, Bumpy said, "I want them dead, all 4 of them, tonight, before sunrise tomorrow. I want them found in trash bags, disposed of like garbage, because that's what they are. Garbage. They treated my grandmother like trash, so that's how they'll be disposed of. You have 9 hours. Sunrise is 6:15 a.m. They need to be dead and bagged before then." Marcus started to explain the logistical challenges. "Bumpy, Greenwood is more than 800 miles from here. We can't possibly," Bumpy interrupted. "I don't care about logistics, Marcus. I care about results. Use anyone you need to use. Pay whatever you need to pay. Call in every favor we have south of the Mason-Dixon line. My grandmother was 73 years old. She was 5 feet tall. She weighed maybe 90 pounds. They hung her in an alley because she accidentally bumped into one of them. Then they laughed about it, went shopping, discuss dress patterns like killing an old woman was entertainment. I want them to understand what it feels like to be treated like garbage. I want their bodies in trash bags. I want them dumped somewhere public, where the whole town can see them. That's the message. That's the lesson. That's what happens when you touch my family. Marcus understood completely. Consider it done. They'll be dead before sunrise. At 4:15 p.m., Marcus Webb began making phone calls. He needed people in South Carolina, people who were capable, experienced, loyal, and most importantly, fast. Fortunately, Bumpy Johnson's criminal organization had extensive connections throughout the South. Criminal networks don't respect regional boundaries. Money and power create relationships everywhere. Marcus called Antoine Tony Bogard, a black gangster who controlled illegal gambling, prostitution, and liquor operations in Charleston, South Carolina, approximately 180 miles from Greenwood. Tony had worked with Bumpy's organization multiple times. He owed favors, multiple significant favors. Tony, it's Marcus Webb. We have an urgent situation in Greenwood. 4 white women lynched Bumpy's grandmother this afternoon. Bumpy wants them dead tonight. All 4 before sunrise. Bodies need to be found in trash bags. Can you handle this? Tony didn't hesitate. Jesus Christ, they lynched Bumpy's grandmother. Yeah, I can handle it. Give me the names and addresses right now. Marcus provided everything. Names, addresses, daily routines all confirmed. You have 9 hours total. Sunrise is 6:15 a.m. They need to be dead and bagged before then. Tony thought for a moment. 9 hours is tight, but I have people closer than Charleston. I can reach contacts in Columbia. That's only 90 minutes from Greenwood. What's the budget? Unlimited. Bumpy doesn't care what this costs, just get it done. Within 30 minutes by 4:45 p.m., Tony had assembled a 4-man team. All experienced, all with military or criminal backgrounds, all completely loyal, all understanding the assignment. 4 white women dead by sunrise, bodies in trash bags, dumped publicly, no witnesses, no evidence, no traces. At 7 p.m., the team arrived in Greenwood. They parked on the outskirts, waited for full darkness, used the time to study their targets, observe the houses, identify security weaknesses. All 4 women were home, eating dinner with their families, watching radio programs, reading, completely comfortable, safe in the absolute certainty that lynching a black woman carried no consequences whatsoever in 1946 South Carolina. They were catastrophically wrong. Target 1, Eleanor Pritchard, 9:30 p.m. Eleanor's husband, Deputy Sheriff Robert Pritchard, was working the night shift. She was home alone. 2 men approached the back door. One picked the lock in 18 seconds. They entered the kitchen silently. Eleanor was in the living room, sitting in an armchair, listening to a radio drama, knitting. She heard a sound. "Robert, is that you?" No answer. She walked toward the kitchen, mildly annoyed. She saw 2 black men standing there. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened to scream. One man covered her mouth. The other injected her neck with a powerful veterinary sedative. Eleanor's eyes rolled back. Her body went limp, unconscious in 12 seconds. They carried her out, placed her in the truck, covered her with a tarp. Total time inside, 90 seconds. They drove to an abandoned barn 3 miles outside Greenwood. Isolated. No neighbors. No traffic. Target 2, Patricia Crawford, 10:15 p.m. Patricia's house was larger, more expensive, reflecting her husband's position as bank president. Her husband was home but drunk, passed out on the couch, snoring loudly. Patricia was upstairs reading a romance novel. Same method. Back door picked. Silent entry. They found her upstairs. She looked up from her book. Saw them. Opened her mouth to scream. Sedative injection. Unconscious. Carried out while her drunk husband snored downstairs, completely oblivious. Out in 90 seconds. Into the truck. To the barn. Target 3, Virginia Morrison, 11 p.m. Virginia's husband was traveling on business. She was home alone with her teenage daughter. The daughter had gone to bed at 10:30, was asleep upstairs. The team waited until the daughter's light went off, then moved. Virginia was in the kitchen making tea. Saw them, tried to run, didn't make it 5 steps. Sedative, unconscious, and out the back door. The daughter slept through everything. Never knew her mother had been taken 30 feet away. Target 4, Catherine Walsh, 11:45 p.m. Catherine was the most complicated target. Her husband Gerald was home, awake, alert, and a former Marine with Pacific combat experience. The team had to be creative. They set a small fire in the tool shed, just enough smoke and flames to be visible, but not enough to spread. Gerald saw the smoke, grabbed a fire extinguisher, ran outside. While he was in the backyard dealing with the fire, the team entered through the front door. Catherine was in the living room. 2 men grabbed her. Sedative injection, out the front door, gone. Gerald came back inside, found the living room empty, assumed she'd gone to bed. Never knew his wife had been taken. By 12:30 a.m. on Friday morning, all 4 women were in the abandoned barn. The sedatives were wearing off. They were regaining consciousness, confused, disoriented, terrified. Their hands were bound, their mouths gagged. They couldn't scream, couldn't call for help. The team leader, Samuel Sam Pierce, a former Army Ranger, stepped forward. His voice was calm, clinical, almost gentle. This afternoon at approximately 2:52 p.m., you 4 women lynched an elderly black woman named Margaret Johnson. You beat her in an alley. You dragged her to a tree. You made a noose. You hung her. Then you went shopping, laughed about it, discussed fabrics. What you didn't know is that Margaret Johnson was the grandmother of Bumpy Johnson. He's a very powerful man in New York City, and he loved his grandmother more than anything in the world. So Mr. Johnson sent us with very specific instructions. He wants you dead, and he wants your bodies found in trash bags, disposed of like garbage, because that's what you are to him. Garbage. You treated an elderly black woman like garbage, so that's how you'll be disposed of. Sam pulled out a Colt 1911, suppressor attached. He shot Eleanor Pritchard first. Headshot, point blank, dead instantly. Then Patricia Crawford, then Virginia Morrison, then Catherine Walsh. 4 shots, 4 deaths, less than 30 seconds. Time of death, 12:47 a.m., Friday, July 19th, 1946. Exactly 9 hours and 55 minutes after they had lynched Margaret Johnson. Well ahead of Bumpy's sunrise deadline. The team worked efficiently. 4 heavy-duty industrial trash bags, each body placed inside, sealed with tape. They loaded the bags into the truck, drove into Greenwood down Main Street, completely deserted at 1:45 a.m. They parked directly in front of the Greenwood Women's Social Club, the same building where all 4 women were members, where they held meetings and luncheons, where they socialized and gossiped. The 4 men carried the trash bags out and placed them on the sidewalk. Side by side, impossible to miss. Then they drove away. By 3 a.m., they were 100 miles away. By dawn, they'd be in Charleston. By Saturday, scattered across 3 states, untraceable, invisible. Friday morning, Greenwood woke up, people heading to work, opening shops. Several walked past the 4 large black trash bags on the sidewalk. Most assumed it was garbage waiting for collection. Then someone noticed dark red liquid leaking from one bag. Blood. They called the police. Within 15 minutes, Sheriff William Hartwell was on scene. They opened the bags, 4 bodies, all white women, all shot in the head, all prominent members of the community. Within an hour, all were identified. Eleanor Pritchard, Patricia Crawford, Virginia Morrison, Catherine Walsh, the same 4 women who had lynched Margaret Johnson less than 30 hours earlier. Everyone who mattered understood immediately. 4 women lynch an elderly black woman Thursday afternoon. Thursday evening, all 4 disappear. Friday morning, their bodies are in trash bags on Main Street. This wasn't random. This wasn't robbery. This was retaliation, revenge, consequences. This was someone demonstrating that lynching has a price. Sheriff Hartwell called the FBI. Special Agent Robert Morrison came from Columbia, spent 2 days investigating. Finally, Sunday afternoon, Morrison called Hartwell into his office. "Sheriff, I'm going to be honest. This investigation is going nowhere. You're not finding the killers. They're long gone, probably in New York or scattered across 5 states. You have no witnesses, no physical evidence, no leads. What you have is a professional hit by people who knew exactly what they were doing. More importantly, and hear this, pursuing this case could get you killed, could get your deputies killed, your family killed. Bumpy Johnson just demonstrated he can reach into a small South Carolina town and execute 4 white women in hours. You really want to provoke him further? My recommendation, off the record, close this case, call it unsolved. Let the families bury their dead. Let everyone move on. Because the alternative is you keep digging until Bumpy decides you're a problem. And then you end up in a trash bag too. Sheriff Hartwell understood. He was angry, but he wasn't stupid. He closed the case. Officially unsolved, the 4 families buried their dead, held funerals, grieved, but they never got justice, never got closure, never learned who killed their wives and mothers, because justice had already been served. Swift, precise, final. Margaret Johnson was buried in Greenwood on Sunday. Bumpy Johnson flew down from New York, attended the funeral, stood silently at her graveside as the preacher said prayers and the small black congregation sang hymns. Bumpy didn't speak, didn't cry publicly, didn't show any emotion. He just stood there in an expensive black suit, staring at the coffin as it lowered into the ground. After everyone left, Marcus Webb asked quietly, "Are you satisfied?" Bumpy's response was simple and cold. "My grandmother is dead, Marcus. I'll never be satisfied." But those 4 women learned what happens when you treat an old black woman like garbage. They became garbage themselves, found in trash bags where they belonged. That's not satisfaction. That's just basic mathematics, an equation balanced. They took something precious from me, so I took everything from them. That's not revenge. That's just making sure the books are even. July 18th, 1946, 2:52 p.m. 4 white women lynched 73-year-old Margaret Johnson. July 19th, 1946, 12:47 a.m. All 4 women are dead, 9 hours and 55 minutes from crime to consequence. July 19th, 1946, 6:45 a.m. All 4 bodies found in trash bags on Main Street. That's not revenge. That's Bumpy Johnson demonstrating that family is sacred, that some lines cannot be crossed, that treating an elderly black woman like garbage means becoming garbage yourself, literally. In bags, disposed of publicly, within 9 hours. Nobody ever touched Bumpy Johnson's family again.